Sometimes a guy picks being alone, and sometimes being alone picks him. For Jonas McCrae, 23 years of quiet in the mountains was like his jail and his safe spot. The 50-year-old trapper lived by himself in the Colorado Rockies, where winter winds screamed like spooky ghosts, and the closest person was a 3-day horse ride through snow that could eat a horse whole. His cabin was dug into the mountain. Smoke from his chimney was the only sign life was still going in this icy, wild place. Jonas was okay with being alone, trading animal furs in town twice a year and not chatting much with anyone. But when a woman stumbles onto his land, nearly frozen and scared of something worse than these killer mountains, his tough walls start to break. What could make someone run into these mountains in the worst of winter? Before we go back to the story, tell us where you're listening from. And if you like this tale, make sure you're following, because tomorrow I've got something super cool for you. Jonas McCrae was checking his traps when he found her. The February wind sliced through the pine trees like a knife, hinting at another snowstorm by night. At 50, Jonas had seen enough mountain winters to read the sky like a book. The dark clouds piling up meant trouble. He should have headed back to his cabin, but the marten tracks he'd followed for 3 days led deeper into the woods, and good furs meant the difference between an okay life and just getting by when he went to Leadville for supplies. His snowshoes crunched on the snow as he checked each steel trap, moving slow and steady like a guy with nowhere else to go. 23 years of this routine had carved paths in his life deeper than the mountain trails. Check traps, fix springs, follow animal signs, get home before dark. It was like a prayer for him. Each step proved he was still alive, still breathing, still moving in a world that forgot Jonas McCrae was even there. The first trap was empty, just wind. The second was tripped by a sneaky fox who stole the bait without losing a hair. Jonas fixed it, kind of impressed. You had to respect a smart rival, even if it cost you money. The third trap sat untouched, under a fallen tree's shadow, but at the fourth, Jonas froze. A woman was crumpled in the snow, 10 yards from his trap line. Her dark hair spread out like spilled ink on the white snow. For a second, Jonas thought she was dead. Her stillness looked final, something he'd seen as a soldier before the mountains took him. But then he saw her chest move slightly under, her ripped wool coat, and something inside him woke up, something he thought was buried deep. She looked young, maybe 26, with fancy features like she came from city parlors, not the wild. Her dress, what was left of it, was once nice dark blue, wool with pearl buttons now torn and stained with what looked like blood. Her hands were bare, fingers waxy white from frostbite, and her lips were turning blue from the cold winning its quiet fight. Jonas walked up carefully, like a guy who knew surprises in the wild were usually bad news. But as he knelt beside her, he saw no weapons, no tricks. Just a young woman, maybe an hour from freezing to death. Her breathing was so faint he had to lean close to check if she was alive. When he did, he smelled a hint of lavender soap under the pine, and fear sweat. "Miss," he said, his voice rough from not talking for 3 months. The words felt weird in his throat. "Miss, can you hear me?" Her eyelids twitched, but didn't open. Jonas took off his thick mittens and touched her cheeks. Cold as river rocks, but still alive. He'd seen enough frostbite cases in his army days to know she didn't have long. He made up his mind fast. He couldn't leave her to die, no matter who she was or how she ended up passed out in his land. Jonas had carried hurt soldiers before, but this woman felt light as air. He picked her up, surprised at how small she seemed in his arms, used to handling heavy traps and rifles. Her head rested on his shoulder as he adjusted his hold, and he caught another whiff of that lavender smell, a scent from soft places, warm rooms, and easy lives he'd left behind. The walk back to his cabin took longer than usual, Jonas moving, slow through the snow to not shake her. The wind got stronger, throwing ice bits at his face and proving his weather guess was right. A big storm was coming, the kind that could trap a guy inside for days. Normally, Jonas liked those storms. They gave him an excuse to stay in with his books and whiskey, pretending the outside world was gone. But now, with a mystery woman in, His arms and questions piling up like snow, Jonas felt something new, uncertainty. His neat, lonely life was about to get messy. His cabin sat in a dip between two ridges, built to catch morning sun but stay hidden from passers-by. Jonas had built it himself his first winter in the mountains, using pine logs and clay, with windows facing south for light and warmth. Over the years, he added a lean-to for wood, a smokehouse for meat, and a small stable for the horse and mule that carried his furs to town twice a year. Inside, it showed 20 years of living alone, simple, clean, but bare. One room was kitchen, workshop, and sitting area, with a big stone fireplace on the north wall. A ladder led to a sleeping loft where Jonas kept his bedroll and a wooden chest, with his few personal things. The furniture was handmade and practical: a plank table, 2 chairs, shelves for books and supplies, hooks for his rifle and tools. Jonas kicked open the cabin door and carried the woman inside, the warmth from his low fire feeling good after the cold wind. He laid her gently on the narrow bed he kept downstairs for nights, when climbing to the loft felt like too much work. Her breathing was still shallow but steady, and in the firelight, he could see how bad she was hurt. Her coat wasn't just torn. It was slashed, like someone used a knife. Dark stains on the fabric might have been mud, but Jonas's army days told him it was probably blood. Someone had hurt this woman bad, and not long ago. The question was if that someone was following her. Moving fast, Jonas built up the fire until the cabin glowed with light and warmth. He heated water in his biggest pot and grabbed clean rags from old shirts. She needed warming up slowly. Too much heat too fast could kill someone this cold. He'd learned that the hard way watching soldiers die in the army, their hearts stopping when medics warmed them too quick. As the cabin got warmer, the woman started to move. Her eyelids fluttered, and soft moans came from her blue lips. Jonas knelt by the bed, not sure if her waking up would be good or bad news. In his experience, people half dead in the wild usually brought trouble. "Easy now," he said, his voice still rough from not talking. "You're safe. You're in my cabin." Her eyes opened, brown, dark as pine bark, full of confusion and fear. She tried to sit up, but Jonas gently pushed her back. "Don't move yet. You were almost frozen when I found you. Gotta warm up slow." She stared at him, taking in his bearded face, his worn clothes, the rough cabin. When she spoke, her voice was super quiet. Where am I?" "My cabin. High mountains about 40 miles northwest of Leadville. Name's Jonas McCrae." He paused, then asked, "What's yours?" Fear flashed on her face, and Jonas saw her glance at the door like she was figuring out how to run. It was a look he knew, someone who expected danger everywhere. "Clara," she said finally. "Clara Merritt." "Well, Miss Merritt, you picked a bad night to travel. Storm's coming that'll trap us for maybe 3 or 4 days. Jonas watched her face, looking for her reaction. "Might wanna... Tell me how you ended up in the snow, in the middle of nowhere, in a torn dress with no winter gear." Clara's hand went to her throat, and Jonas saw bruises there for the first time, finger-shaped marks that screamed violence. Her breathing got fast, and that scared look came back. I can't tell you that." Jonas nodded slow. He'd been a soldier long enough to know some wounds went deeper than skin. Pushing too hard would make her shut down. "All right, then. For now, let's just get you warmed up right. Can you feel your fingers and toes?" Clara wiggled her fingers, wincing. "They hurt." "Good. Hurting means they're coming back. No pain would be worse." Jonas stood and went to his shelves. "I'm gonna make some broth. You need something warm in you, and tea won't cut it." As he worked, cutting deer meat into a pot and adding wild onions and herbs, Jonas kept sneaking looks at his guest. Clara Merritt didn't belong in these mountains. Her soft hands and styled hair screamed fancy upbringing, like drawing rooms and dinner parties, not snowshoes and survival. But here she was, and the fear in her eyes said she didn't choose to come here. The wind outside started howling for real, shaking the cabin's windows and sending snow sliding off the roof. Jonas had lived through tons of storms alone, but now, with a stranger in his space, the sounds felt creepier, more isolating. Whatever Clara was running from would have to wait. The mountain winter had decided for both of them. They were stuck together until spring. 3 days passed before Clara could stand without wobbling, and Jonas started hoping she'd survive whatever brought her to his door. The storm he'd predicted hit hard, roaring around the cabin like a monster, piling snow against the windows until it felt like a glowing cave. During those days, Jonas got used to taking care of someone else, something he'd forgotten after 23 years alone. Clara slept most of the first day, only waking to sip broth and take warm stones Jonas put at her feet to fight the cold. By day, too, she was sitting up and talking more, though she stayed quiet about her past. On the third morning, Jonas woke to find her at the window, staring at the snow with a look he couldn't figure out. "Feeling stronger?" he asked, stoking the fire and getting ready to check his traps. "Much, thank you." Clara turned from the window, and Jonas noticed how the firelight made her dark hair shine with reddish bits. "Mr. McCrae, I need to leave as soon as the weather clears." Jonas paused. "That might not work, miss. This storm's just the start. Winter's got 2 months left, and the passes won't clear till April at the earliest." Fear crossed Clara's face. "I can't stay that long. There are people—" She stopped, pressing her lips tight. "People looking for you?" Clara didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Jonas finished packing for the day's work, choosing his words carefully. 3 days together had taught him Clara scared easy, like a deer that knew hunters were near. "Miss Merritt, I've lived in these mountains long enough to know when someone's running from trouble. I'm not asking for your life story, but if danger's following you, I need to know." "Why?" Her question came out sharp. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Jonas met her eyes steady. "Maybe not, but I found you, brought you here, and that makes you my responsibility till you're strong enough to choose for yourself." For a moment, Clara looked like she might cry. Then she straightened up with effort and walked to where her coat hung drying by the fire. "Then I'll choose now. I'm leaving today. In this weather, you'll be dead in a mile. Better than bringing danger to someone who's been nothing but kind." Jonas watched her struggle with the torn coat, her hands still clumsy from frostbite. Clara, using her first name, made her look up. "Whatever you're running from, it can't follow you through 6 feet of snow and cold that'll freeze a man solid in an hour. Nobody's crazy enough to travel in this. You don't know Sheriff Garrett." The name slipped out, and Jonas saw her face go pale as she realized her mistake. She sank into one of his chairs, looking defeated. "Sheriff Garrett," Jonas repeated. "From where?" Clara was quiet so long Jonas thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a tiny voice, she started talking. "Millerville, about 70 miles southeast of here." She stared at the fire. "I was the school teacher there. Been there 3 years since I came west from Pennsylvania after my parents died." Jonas poured coffee and waited. He knew scared people opened up better with patience than pressure. "Sheriff Garrett decided he wanted to marry me. He's a big deal in town, owns half the businesses, and has the mayor in his pocket. When I said no, he made it clear I didn't get a choice. Forced marriage," Jonas said, starting to get it. "He set it all up. Had Judge Morrison ready to do the wedding, had my boarding house searched for fake proof I'd done something bad to force me to marry to save my reputation." Clara's hands clenched. "I knew if I went through with it, I'd never get away. Garrett's got a bad history with women. His first wife died weirdly, and there were rumors about a saloon girl who crossed him." Jonas felt anger bubbling, something he thought he'd buried long ago. "So you ran." "I tried, but Garrett had men watching me. I got word to Marshal Hendricks, who was passing through on his way to Denver. He believed me, said he'd heard bad stuff about Garrett from other towns." Clara's voice cracked. "The marshal agreed to help me get to Denver for a train. East. What happened?" "Garrett found out. He and his men ambushed us about 10 miles out of town. Shot Marshal Hendricks dead like a dog." Clara touched her throat where the bruises had faded but not gone. "Garrett said I could come back and marry him quietly, or he'd hunt me down and tell everyone I was a bad woman who got the marshal killed." Jonas set his coffee down carefully. "You got away. I had the marshal's horse. It was dark, and I knew they'd think I'd head for the main road. So I went the other way, up into the mountains. Rode for 2 days till the horse went lame, then walked." Clara looked at Jonas with tired eyes. "I don't even know how I ended up here. I was just trying to stay ahead. Find somewhere safe. Jonas started grabbing stuff from his shelves. Jerky, hardtack, a spare blanket. Clara watched, worried. What are you doing? Getting ready. Jonas checked his rifle, counting bullets. If this Garrett's as stubborn as you say, he'll come when the weather clears. Might have men waiting in the lower mountains already. You don't understand, Clara said fast. He's got 6 men, maybe more. You can't fight them all. Jonas looked at her, maybe with a tiny smile. Miss Merritt, I was a cavalry officer for 12 years, fighting Apaches, Comanches, and Confederate raiders. I didn't survive by running from fights. But this isn't your fight. It is now. Jonas's voice was final, stopping her protests. You're under my roof, so it's my fight. Besides, he added, checking his pistol, I never liked bullies. Clara stared as the quiet mountain man who saved her turned into something tougher, more dangerous. There was a sharpness in his moves now, like old training kicking in. There's something else, she said slowly. Something I found in the marshal's saddlebags after he was killed. Clara went to her stuff by the fire and pulled a small thing from her torn dress pocket. It wasn't just a marshal's star. It was something that chilled Jonas. Where'd you get that? It was pinned inside his coat. I didn't see it till after. Clara held up the badge, its metal shining in the firelight. What is it? Jonas took it with shaky hands. It was smaller than a sheriff's star, silver, with an eagle and U.S. Deputy Marshal written around it. He'd seen these in his army days. Men with these badges answered to the federal government, not local sheriffs. Marshal Hendricks wasn't just passing through, Jonas said slowly. He was investigating something that got him killed. Investigating. What? Jonas turned the badge over, thinking. Could be anything. Land scams, mail theft, gun smuggling. But whatever it was federal business. That means Garrett didn't just kill a local lawman, he killed a federal marshal. Clara sank back in her chair as the truth hit her. That makes it worse, doesn't it? If they find that badge, they'll kill us both to keep it secret. Jonas tucked the badge in his shirt pocket, which means we're not just dealing with a crooked sheriff anymore. We're dealing with a guy who's murdered to cover up federal crimes. The cabin went quiet, except for the fire crackling and the wind whistling outside. The storm wasn't letting up, but Jonas knew time was short. When the weather cleared, Sheriff Garrett would come, and Jonas would be ready. Clara watched him check his weapons, feeling uneasy. Mr. McCrae, Jonas, I never meant for this to happen. I didn't mean to bring this trouble to you. Jonas looked up from his rifle, and Clara saw something in his eyes that stopped her breath. It wasn't fear or anger, but a kind of quiet happiness, like he'd been waiting for this moment without knowing it. Clara, he said, her name sounding warmer now. Some troubles are worth having and some fights are worth fighting. As if his words called it, the wind outside calmed, and the first breaks showed in the storm clouds. Winter was easing up, which meant their safe time was running out. Trouble was coming. The storm stopped on the 4th day, leaving the world covered in fresh snow that sparkled like diamonds in the morning sun. Jonas stood at his cabin window, coffee steaming, studying the land with eyes trained by years in the mountains. The silence was deep, the kind that comes after heavy snow when even the wind holds still. How long do we have? Clara asked, from behind him. She'd been up before dawn, pacing like a trapped animal. Hard to say. If they're smart, they'll wait a day or two for the snow to settle. But desperate guys don't always make smart choices. Jonas turned from the window. We should get ready. Over the past few days, being stuck together had made them oddly close. Jonas noticed Clara's little habits, like how she tucked her hair behind her ear when thinking, or the soft sound of her breathing when she slept on the bed he'd given up for a chair by the fire. She was different from any woman he'd known. Smart, well-spoken, but with a toughness that kept her alive through stuff that would have broken most people. Clara had settled into cabin life surprisingly well. She took over cooking without being asked, making his plain food taste better than ever. She mended his spare shirt with neat stitches and organized his messy shelves like a teacher running a classroom. It felt homey in a way Jonas hadn't known since. He stopped that thought. The past needed to stay buried. Teach me, Clara said suddenly. Teach me what? How to shoot. How to fight. I won't be helpless when they come. Jonas looked at her, seeing determination mixed with fear. You ever used a gun before? My dad taught me to shoot when I was a kid, but just for fun with his old rifle. This is different. Jonas nodded. Yeah, it is. Shooting at a guy who's shooting back is a whole other thing. He went to the wooden chest in the corner where he kept his personal stuff. Clara watched as he opened it, pulling out a pistol in a worn holster, a box of bullets, and something that made her gasp, a military medal, old and tarnished, but clear. You were honored, she said softly. Jonas glanced at the medal like he'd forgotten it was there. Different life, different guy. What happened? Why'd you leave it all behind? Jonas was quiet, weighing how much to share. The medal felt heavier than it should. It stood for honors earned in blood, a career built on orders he couldn't follow anymore. Ever hear of Sand Creek? He asked finally. Clara's face went pale. Everyone who'd read a newspaper knew about Sand Creek, where Colorado militia massacred Cheyenne and Arapaho villages, shocking the country with its cruelty. You were there? I was supposed to be. 3rd Cavalry was ordered to back up Colonel Chivington's militia. Jonas set the medal on the table. I saw what they planned, killing women and kids, and said no. You refused? Deserted, officially. Rode out the night before and never looked back. Jonas's voice was flat, but Clara heard the pain underneath. 150 innocent people died at Sand Creek. Could have been 151 if I'd stayed and done my job. Clara reached across and touched his hand, the first time she'd reached out. You did the right thing. The right thing got me called a deserter and a coward. Had a price on my head for 5 years till the army stopped looking. Jonas looked at where her hand rested on his. That's why I'm here, Clara. Why I've been alone for 23 years. Because you couldn't be part of murder. Because I broke my oath. Because when it mattered most, I chose what I thought was right over duty. Jonas pulled his hand away gently. Some choices stick with you forever. Clara studied his worn face, seeing his isolation clearly now. It wasn't just liking his own company. It was punishment. A self-made exile for a choice he still questioned, even knowing it was right. Show me how to use the gun, she said. Jonas spent the morning teaching Clara his spare revolver, a beat-up Colt .44 that still shot straight. They used tin cans for targets, setting them in the snow, outside. Clara's hands were steadier than he expected, and her aim got better fast once she stopped jumping at the noise. Remember, Jonas said, standing behind her as she aimed. Don't yank the trigger. Squeeze it slow like you're trying not to wake a baby. Clara nodded, focused. The gun fired, and a can flew off with a clang. She turned to Jonas with a real smile, and for a moment, he forgot to breathe. When she smiled like that, the fear left her eyes, and he saw the woman she'd been before. Confident, lively, beautiful, in a way that wasn't just looks. Good shot, he said. Good teacher. Clara reloaded like he'd shown her, moving more confidently. What else do I need to know? Jonas thought seriously. How to read the land, move quiet, make yourself hard to find. He pointed to the trees. These mountains can hide you or kill you, depending on how well you know them. They spent the afternoon learning woodcraft, how to move through snow without leaving tracks, read weather signs, find shelter and water. Clara soaked it up, like her life depended on it, which it might. As the sun set, painting the peaks pink and gold, they went back to the cabin. Clara made dinner while Jonas cleaned his weapons, the homey scene feeling calm despite the danger. But under it, tension buzzed like a tight wire. They both knew their safe time was almost gone. Jonas, Clara said as they ate, when this is over, what'll you do? What do you mean? Will you stay here? Keep living alone? Jonas paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Her question hit something he'd been avoiding. The way Clara's presence changed his life. The cabin felt warmer, more alive with her in it. Even the quiet between them felt friendly, not empty. I don't know, he said honestly. Been alone so long, I forgot what it's like to have someone to talk to, cook for, someone who cares if I come back safe from traps. Clara's cheeks got pink. I do care about your safety. I know. Jonas met her eyes across the table. Question is, what'll you do when this is over? I can't go back to teaching, not with my reputation trashed. And I can't go east, no family, no prospects. Clara's voice got quiet. Guess I'll have to start over somewhere new. They fell into a cozy silence, but Jonas's mind raced. The thought of Clara leaving, of going back to his lonely life, felt wrong. She'd been here less than a week, but he couldn't imagine the cabin without her humming, her neat touches to his rough setup, her quick mind and smile. But what could he offer? He was a wanted man with just a cabin, traps, and a past he couldn't shake. She deserved better than hiding in the mountains with a broken soldier running from ghosts. Clara, he started, then stopped, unsure how to go on. Yes? Jonas looked at her in the firelight, her dark hair glowing, hands wrapped. Around her coffee cup, she was so beautiful it hurt his chest. But more, she made him remember what it felt like to have something worth protecting, worth fighting for beyond just staying alive. Nothing, he said finally. Just be careful tomorrow. Stay close to the cabin. Clara nodded, but Jonas saw questions in her eyes. Questions he wasn't ready to answer about feelings he wasn't ready to admit. The badge in his pocket felt hot against his chest, a reminder their future wasn't certain. Outside, an owl hooted, its call bouncing. Off the mountain walls, somewhere out there, Sheriff Garrett was planning, gathering men, ready to take what he thought was his. And in the space between the fire's warmth and the cold outside, Jonas was remembering what it meant to have something to lose. Wolves came on the fifth night. Jonas woke to their howling, not the far-off songs he knew, but close calls full of hunger and need. The tough winter had hit all the mountain creatures hard, and a starving wolf pack was one of the few things that really worried him. He slipped from his bedroll by the fire, careful not to wake Clara, and went to the window. Moonlight on snow showed dark shapes moving among the trees. Maybe 7 wolves, their ribs sharp under thin fur. The pack leader, a gray-black female with smart yellow eyes, stood at the clearing's edge, sniffing the air. She was thinking, weighing the smell of humans and smoke against the hunger driving her pack down from the high mountains. Jonas grabbed, his rifle checking it by feel. Movement from the bed made him turn. Clara was awake, eyes wide in the dim firelight. "What is it?" she whispered. "Wolves, hungry ones." Jonas added wood to the fire to make it bigger. "They smell our food, maybe us too. Fire'll keep them back, but we gotta be ready." Clara grabbed the pistol Jonas gave her, moving smoothly after days of practice. "How many?" 7, maybe 8. Jonas stood by the main window, rifle ready. "They're testing us, seeing if we're easy food or too much trouble." The pack leader stepped closer, her huge form gliding through the snow like a ghost. She was awesome and scary, perfectly built for this tough place. Jonas had seen wolves before, even traded with trappers who respected them as hunters. But these were desperate. A younger male broke from the pack, going for the deer meat Jonas hung to dry on the cabin's north wall. The wolf stood on its back legs, jaws snapping just out of reach. Its claws scratched the logs, and Jonas heard Clara gasp. "Easy," Jonas said to himself as much as her. "They're just hungry. But if we look weak, hunger'll beat caution." The pack leader turned toward the window where Jonas watched, and for a moment, their eyes met across the moonlit clearing. Her yellow eyes had a smart look that reminded Jonas of Clara's fear when he found her. The wolf decided. She moved forward, leading her pack in a loose circle around the cabin, looking for a weak spot that wouldn't mean facing the fire and armed humans inside. "They won't give up easy," Jonas said quietly. "What do we do?" Jonas thought fast. He could scare them off with shots, but gunfire would carry far in the thin air. If Garrett had men nearby, it might draw them. But starving wolves were a real threat that needed action now. The choice was made when the young wolf ran at the cabin door. Jonas shot through the window, the bullet hitting snow near the wolf's feet. It yelped and ran back, but the pack leader didn't move, lips pulled back in a quiet snarl. "That was a warning," Jonas said, loading another bullet. "Next one won't be." But the pack leader didn't care about warnings. She charged. The cabin's front wall slamming into the logs so hard the whole place shook. Her claws scratched at the gaps, and Jonas realized she was trying to rip her way in. He aimed carefully and shot. The bullet hit her shoulder, spinning her around and dropping her in the snow. She tried to stand, hurt but not dead, her pack whining and circling her. "Oh no," Clara whispered, pale in the firelight. Jonas was. Already moving, checking other windows for the pack's reaction. Hurt wolves were dangerous, but their packmates could turn mean if one was down. He'd seen that before. But these wolves, driven by hunger, chose different. The leader's mate, a big scarred male, went to her, touching noses like a goodbye. Then he howled, a deep, sad sound, not a hunting call. The others joined, their voices mixing in a song of loss and letting go. When it stopped, the pack slipped back into the woods, leaving their leader bleeding in the snow. Jonas watched them go, feeling a heavy weight. Clara moved to his side, her hand on his arm. "You had to," she said softly. "I know." Jonas set down his rifle and headed for the door. "But it doesn't make it easier. Where are you going?" "To finish it. She's hurting." Clara grabbed his arm tighter. "It's too risky. What if they come back?" Jonas looked at her, seeing fear not just for wolves, but for losing him. When had he started mattering to her? When had she started mattering to him? "They won't come back," he said gently. "They made their choice, but I can't leave her to die slow." Clara nodded, understanding even if she didn't like it. Jonas put on his coat and took his pistol, leaving the rifle with her. "If anything goes wrong, bar the door and don't open it for anyone but me. Got it?" "Yes." Jonas stepped into the cold night, his breath making clouds in the moonlight. The wounded wolf watched him come, her yellow eyes smart and calm. No fear, just acceptance, like soldiers he'd known who saw their end coming. He knelt close, seeing the strength. In her face, a creature perfectly made for this hard land. In another world, he might have admired her from afar, respected her as a fellow survivor. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it. The pistol shot echoed sharp and final. Jonas stayed kneeling, honoring a tough enemy who died protecting her family. When he walked back to the cabin, he carried the weight of another death, even if he had no choice. Clara was waiting by the door, face tight with worry. "It's done. It's done." Jonas holstered his pistol and built up the fire. "She was brave, just trying to feed her pack." Clara watched him, seeing the heaviness in his moves, his shoulders slumped like he carried something invisible. "You've done this before. Not just wolves. Taken lives you didn't want to." Jonas paused with the fire. "Too many times. In the war, after, and now here. Sometimes I think the mountains called me because death makes sense here. Clean. Honest, no politics or greed. But this wasn't like that. No, this was just survival. Hers or ours." Jonas straightened, looking at Clara in the firelight. "Which is what it'll be when Garrett comes. Him or us. No middle ground." Clara moved closer to the fire, still holding his pistol, her grip sure now. Over the days, Jonas had watched her change from a scared runaway to someone who could fight back. The change fit her, showed a strength he bet was always there, hidden under rules for a proper teacher. "Jonas," she said, not looking at him, "when this is over, if we make it, I want you to know something." "What's that?" "These days with you, hiding, learning to shoot and live off the land, they're the freest I've ever felt." Clara's cheeks got red, but she kept going. "I know it's not proper to say, but being proper almost got me killed or worse." Jonas felt a warmth in his chest, not from the fire. "Clara, let me finish." She turned to face him, her brown eyes glowing with flames. "I've never felt safer than in this cabin with you, never felt more like me. I wanted you to know, whatever happens." The silence stretched, full of possibilities and the fire's crackle. Jonas moved closer, pulled by something stronger than thought. Clara didn't back away. She reached up and touched the scar on his cheek from his army days, a mark he'd forgotten until her soft fingers traced it. "You're a good man, Jonas McCrae," she said softly. "Whatever the army says, whatever you think, you're good." Jonas covered her hand with his, pressing her palm against his cheek. Her skin was warm, alive, making him feel more than just a survivor. For 23 years, he'd kept his heart locked, avoiding anything that could hurt. But Clara got past those walls just by being her, brave, kind, stubborn, beautiful, in ways deeper than looks. "Clara," he said, his voice rough with feelings he'd buried. "I know," she whispered. "I know it's messy. We're both running from stuff that doesn't forgive, but I needed you to know." Outside, the wind got loud, rattling. The windows reminding them of the tough world beyond. Somewhere in the dark, Sheriff Garrett was coming. Somewhere in their future were choices that would decide if they lived or died, found peace or kept running. But for now, in the fire's warm glow, with Clara's hand soft against his scarred face and her eyes full of hope he thought was gone, Jonas let himself believe some things were worth fighting for beyond just staying alive. Some things might even be worth living for. The chess set showed up on their 7th night like it was always part of the cabin's simple stuff. Clara found it while sorting Jonas's few books, tucked in a wooden box behind cheap novels and army history books, the pieces wrapped in soft leather. "You play?" she asked, holding a knight carved from light pine. Jonas looked up from cleaning his rifle, his cheeks a bit red. "Made those during long winters. Keeps a guy's hands busy instead of drinking." The pieces were pretty in a simple way, each carved with care from long, lonely hours. The knights were rearing horses, with flowing manes, bishops in robes that seemed to move, and the king and queen had faces with both pride and sadness. "They're amazing," Clara said, touching the queen's smooth surface. "Will you play with me?" Jonas paused, then put his rifle down. "Been a long time since I played anyone but myself." They set up the board on his handmade table, the pieces casting shadows in the firelight. Jonas played careful, like planning a battle. Clara played bold, her moves surprising him. Their first game took almost 2 hours, Jonas winning with patient strategy. "Another?" Clara asked, resetting the pieces. "You sure? It's late?" "I'm sure." As nights passed, chess became their evening habit. They'd eat, tend the fire, and settle into their chairs for games that got more intense. Clara learned fast, using her smarts to match the game's strategy. More than that, chess let them sit close, study each other's faces, share little moments of friendly rivalry. "You're thinking too hard," Jonas said on their 10th night, watching Clara puzzle over a tricky move. "I'm thinking just right," she replied, moving her bishop to threaten his queen. "Check." Jonas smiled, a real smile that lit up his face. Clever girl. Clara's heart skipped at the warmth in his voice, the way his eyes crinkled. Over the days, she'd seen Jonas come out of his lonely shell. He laughed easier, told stories of mountain adventures, even hummed sometimes while working. The change suited him, showed a softness his hard life had almost buried. "Jonas," she said as he planned his move, "tell me about before the mountains, before the war. What were you like young?" Jonas took her bishop with his knight, easing the threat, young and dumb mostly, full of big ideas about honor and duty that seemed clearer than they were. "You were an idealist." "A romantic," Jonas corrected, eyeing the board. "Believed in causes, country, thought right and wrong were clear. Took 12 years of war to learn most lines are drawn in mud and blood, shifting with the weather." Clara moved her queen, a bold sacrifice that opened Jonas's king. "What made you join the army?" "Family tradition, mostly. My dad fought. In the Mexican War, his dad at New Orleans with Jackson. McCrae's were soldiers since Scotland." Jonas frowned at the board, seeing her trap but liking its style. "I was good at it, too. Had a knack for reading land, knowing how battles move. Made captain at 25, major by 30. And then I started seeing what we were really doing, not just how well we did it." Jonas moved his king to safety, but Clara's attack kept coming. "Hard to stay romantic about honor when you're told to burn out families who never hurt anyone." Clara took his rook with her bishop. "Check again." Jonas looked at the board and saw he was beat. Clara had given up pieces to set up an unstoppable attack, a move that took smarts and guts. "Well played," he said, tipping his king over. "My dad taught me never to play safe when it matters," Clara said, then blushed at the double meaning. Jonas reset the pieces, moving carefully. "Your dad sounds wise. He was a philosophy professor at a small college in Pennsylvania. Believed life should be lived with passion and truth." Clara's voice got soft. Met my mom at a lecture on transcendentalism. She was the only woman there and the only one brave enough to argue with him. Sounds like her daughter. Clara smiled. Mom said the best marriages mix love and friendly competition. They challenged each other. Mind, morals, even at cards. But they loved each other so much, everyone around believed in true love. Jonas handled the white pieces carefully. Must have been hard, losing them. Cholera hit the college. Town. They died 3 days apart. Clara's voice stayed steady, but Jonas saw the pain in her eyes. I think Dad chose to follow Mom. Couldn't live without her. Is that what you want? That kind of partnership? The question hung heavy, full of meaning they weren't ready to face straight. Clara met his gaze across the chessboard, seeing something in his gray eyes that made her heart race. I used to think it was impossible, she said carefully. Fairy tales for people who didn't know how tough life is. She waved at the cabin, their shared space, the closeness from games and talks and danger. Now I think maybe my parents weren't silly. Maybe they found something worth fighting for. Jonas's hands froze on the white king. Clara, I know what you'll say, she cut in, that this isn't real life, just two people stuck together by trouble, that when danger's gone, we'll see why this can't work. That's true, maybe, but maybe it's also true that some things are worth risking. Clara leaned closer, her voice soft. Maybe two people can find each other in bad times and discover something they didn't know they needed. Jonas felt his heart's walls strain against feelings he'd forgotten. For 23 years, he'd thought solitude was safety, that caring for nothing meant losing nothing. But Clara woke up needs, not just wanting her, though that was there, but a deeper need for a partner who saw his strengths and flaws and stayed. You don't know everything, he said quietly. The things I've done, the prices I've paid, why I can't go back to the world. Tell me. Jonas looked at her across the chess pieces, seeing challenge and acceptance. Clara had proved she wouldn't run from hard truths. She'd fled a corrupt sheriff, survived winter mountains, learned to fight. If anyone could handle his full story, it was her. There was a woman, he started, his voice rough with old feelings. Before the war got ugly, before Sand Creek changed it all. Her name was Elizabeth. Clara felt a pang, maybe jealousy, but kept her face calm. Tell me about her. Met her in Colorado Springs when I thought I was one of the good guys. She was a doctor's daughter. Smart, beautiful, everything a young officer wanted in a wife. Jonas's hands fidgeted with the chess pieces. I courted her right, asked her dad's permission, planned a future with promotions and kids. What happened? Got called away for 6 months chasing Cheyenne raiders in Kansas. When I came back, Elizabeth was married to a Denver banker. Her dad said she couldn't wait forever for a soldier who might not come back. Clara heard the old hurt in his voice, a wound still raw. She broke your heart. She broke my faith, Jonas corrected. In love, promises, the idea that anything good could survive what I did for a living. Made it easier to be a soldier, who followed orders without thinking too hard. Until Sand Creek. Until Sand Creek showed you what you'd become. A guy who could plan to kill innocents because it was smart for the army. A guy who lost his soul so slow he didn't notice till it was almost gone. Clara reached over and held his hand. But you didn't lose it. You chose right over easy. Humanity over orders. That took more courage than following commands. Jonas looked at their joined hands, amazed at how right it felt. Clara's fingers were slim but strong, rough from their training. They were hands that could heal or shoot, belonging to a woman who knew strength and kindness went together. Clara, he said, struggling for words that wouldn't sound like promises he might not keep. I can't give you the life you deserve. I'm a wanted man in exile. I've got nothing but this cabin and whatever peace I can scrape from the wild. What if that's enough? Clara's voice was steady. What if I've learned I don't need fancy things or safety? What if I need a guy who treats me as equal, pushes me to be stronger, looks at me like I'm worth fighting for? Jonas felt something open in his chest, warmth spreading where he'd been cold for years. You are worth fighting for, he said hoarsely. Worth living for, worth risking everything. The words hung between them, simple but huge. Outside, the wind reminded them danger was still out there, But inside, in the firelight with chess pieces and shared truths, something new was born, something that might survive what was coming. Jonas started carving the morning after their chess talk, his hands moving on their own while his mind sorted out what had changed. The pine piece had sat on his workbench for months, from a tree that fell near his traps, its grain so perfect it begged to be shaped. Now his knife was turning it into something Clara wouldn't expect. She found him after breakfast, wood shavings curling away from his blade. "What are you making?" "Something for you," Jonas said, not looking up. "A keepsake, I guess." Clara moved closer, curious about the softness in his voice. In the window's light, she saw the shape forming, curved, graceful, with details still unclear. "Can I see?" Jonas hesitated, then held it up. It was a bird, a small mountain wren with wings spread, every feather carved with care. It fit in Clara's palm, but held the spirit of freedom and beauty that seemed impossible in wood. "It's beautiful," Clara said. "How'd you learn to carve like this?" "Need, mostly. Long winters with just time, wood, and a need to keep my hands busy." Jonas ran his thumb along the bird's wing, checking its curve. "But this one's different. This one means something." Clara's heart tightened at the quiet strength in his voice. She'd seen Jonas come alive over the days, more open with each talk, but this was different, deliberate, beauty made by hands that had known too much fighting. "Why a bird?" "Because birds don't stay caged," Jonas said, simply. "No matter how cozy the cage, they always find a way to fly free. Reminds me of someone." Clara sat beside his workbench, overwhelmed by the gift's thoughtfulness. In her old life, she'd gotten flowers or scarves from parents, but none carried the meaning of Jonas's wooden bird. "Jonas, I need to tell you something." He looked up, seeing her seriousness. "What?" "I've been thinking about what you said last night about not giving me the life I deserve." Clara met his eyes. "The thing is, I had the life everyone thought I deserved. Good job, nice room, marriage prospects, and it nearly broke me." Jonas set down his knife, listening fully. "That life was a cage, Jonas. A pretty one, where I was supposed to smile, nod, never have big opinions or upset anyone. My smarts were unseemly, my independence a flaw." Clara's voice grew strong. "When Garrett wanted me, everyone thought I should be grateful. A single woman my age with no prospects. I should have jumped at any offer, but you didn't. I was terrified, not just of Garrett, but of what marrying him meant. A life owned, not loved, controlled, not cherished. I ran to these mountains because I'd rather die free than live as someone's thing." Jonas took her hand, his rough fingers lacing with hers. "You'll never be anyone's thing, Clara. Not while I'm here." "I know, and that's what I'm saying." Clara kissed his knuckles softly. "This life, hiding, learning to survive, answering to nobody but us. It's not a step down. It's freedom." Jonas felt his exile shift in his mind. For 23 years, he'd seen his mountain life as punishment, less than what he'd lost. But Clara saw possibility where he saw guilt. "You mean that?" "More than anything." Clara's eyes burned with truth. "I don't need society's okay or city comforts. I need a partner, equality, to be me without saying sorry. I found that here with you." Jonas looked for any doubt in her face, but saw only certainty, a woman choosing more than she'd ever been offered. "Clara," he said, voice thick with feeling, "are you saying what I think?" "I'm saying I love you, Jonas McCrae. I love your strength, your kindness, your honor, your scars. I love how you treat me as equal, how you've taught me to be braver than I knew." Clara's cheeks reddened, but she held his gaze. "If you'll have me, I want to stay. Not just till danger's gone, but forever. I want to build a life here with you." The words hit Jonas hard, stealing his breath. He couldn't speak, just stared at this amazing woman who saw past his walls to the man he'd forgotten he could be. "I love you too," he said finally, the words bursting out with raw honesty. "Since the second night, when you insisted on cooking even though you could barely stand. Maybe before, when you looked at me and wouldn't spill your secrets." Without reason, Clara's smile was bright, world-changing. "Really? Really?" Jonas kissed her palm gently. "But Clara, you gotta know what you're choosing. This ain't a game. It's a hard life in a tough place with a guy who's got enemies and a past that won't stay gone. I understand. Do you? Once you pick this, there's no going back to fancy life. No changing your mind when the adventure fades and you're stuck hauling water, chopping wood, wondering if every noise is trouble. Clara stood facing him directly, holding the wooden bird. Jonas McCrae, she said firmly, I, Clara Merritt, choose you. I choose this life, this place, the future we'll make. I choose freedom over fancy, partnership over protection, love over safety. She paused, smiling. And I trust a guy who carves such beauty has more to offer than he thinks. Jonas stood, overwhelmed by her certainty, her complete commitment. He'd spent years thinking he had nothing to give, but Clara's acceptance felt like a gift he didn't deserve, but needed. Clara, she silenced him with a kiss. Tasting of coffee and courage, promises made fully. Jonas's arms wrapped around her, holding tight like she might vanish. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads touching. There's something else, Clara said softly. Something in my teaching stuff you should see. She went to her things and pulled a pressed wildflower, purple and delicate, from her school book. Mountain lupine, Jonas said. Where'd you get it? Picked it last summer at a school picnic in the foothills. First one I saw, thought it was the prettiest thing ever. Clara held it to the light, its petals thin with age. I kept it to remember that moment, finding something precious where I didn't expect it. Jonas felt the meaning, like a bell ringing in his chest. And now, Clara said, I know finding beautiful things in tough places is normal. The best discoveries come when you're brave enough to leave safe spots. She placed the flower in his hands. This lupine grew in rocky soil, high up, where most plants can't. It thrived because of the hard conditions, not despite them. Jonas looked at the petals, then at Clara's face, seeing the same wonder from that first night she refused to break. Like us, he said. Like us. Clara's smile was soft, sure, full of hope. Two people who found each other in impossible times and learned they were just what the other needed. Outside, the wind howled, and danger was coming. But inside, with firelight, carved birds, and pressed flowers, Jonas let himself believe in something he thought was lost. Love. Clara found the wanted poster while organizing Jonas's shelves, tucked between flour and beans, like a forgotten piece of his past. The paper was old but clear, with a rough sketch of a younger Jonas McCrae, and bold words that scared her. Wanted for desertion, Major Jonas Daniel McCrae, 3rd Colorado Cavalry. Reward, $500, dead or alive. Clara sat on a crate, hands shaking as she held the poster. $500 was a fortune, enough to bring bounty hunters to the mountains for a deserter who'd dodged justice for over 20 years. Find something good? Jonas's voice from the doorway made her jump, the poster crinkling. He was back from checking traps, 3 rabbits over his shoulder, his face going dark as he saw what she held. You never said anything, Clara said, keeping her voice even. Jonas set down his rifle and rabbits, hanging his coat calmly. Didn't seem important. Didn't seem... Clara stared, shocked. Jonas, there's a $500 bounty on you. That's more than most folks see in 2 years. I know the amount. And you didn't think to tell me? When we were planning for Garrett, talking about a future together? Clara stood, clutching the poster. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or that I wouldn't care? Jonas faced her across the cabin, his face stubborn. I told you I was a deserter. I broke my oath and ran from the army. What's a number matter? It matters because you're not just hiding from your past. You're hiding from people. Chasing you. Every time you go to town, talk to anyone, you risk getting caught. Clara's voice got loud despite herself. I'm not just choosing to love a loner. I'm choosing a fugitive. That changes things. Jonas's jaw tightened, like he was ready for a hit. Then how? Clara moved closer, seeing the lines around his eyes, the silver in his beard. It changes things because now I get why. You've been alone so long. Not just because you disagreed with the army, but because you're scared anyone close to you becomes a target. Clara, let me finish. She touched his cheek, feeling him flinch. It changes things because I see what you've been trying to tell me, that loving you means danger, uncertainty, maybe running any moment. And it changes things because I'm mad, furious that the army called a good man a criminal for refusing to kill women and kids. Jonas blinked, not expecting that. Clara, I broke my oath. I left my post. By army rules, you were supposed to help murder innocents. By any good rules, you did what honor asked. Clara stepped closer, her lavender soap scent mixing with the wild. Don't you dare say sorry for choosing right over easy. The army doesn't see it that way. The army was wrong about Sand Creek, about you, about what honor means. Clara's voice softened, but her belief stayed strong. Jonas, you've punished yourself for 23 years for the noblest thing you ever did. Isn't that enough? Jonas felt something open inside, not breaking but freeing. For over 20 years he'd carried the army's judgment, believing he was a criminal, a coward. It justified his loneliness, his belief he had nothing to offer. But Clara saw a hero who chose principle over ease, who gave up everything rather than do evil. You really believe that? He asked, amazed. I believe in you. The guy who saved my life, taught me to survive, carves birds for the woman he loves to remind her of freedom. Clara's hand rested over his heart. I believe in the man who'd rather live in exile than do wrong. Jonas covered her hand, feeling his heartbeat against her palm. Even knowing what it means, that choosing me means living outside the law, especially knowing that. Clara's smile was fierce, bright. Jonas, before you, I was a good girl, following rules, never questioning, thinking respectability mattered more than being real. Now I'm a woman who can shoot straight, think for herself, and see that sometimes the right choice is the illegal one. Clara stood on her toes, face level with his. You didn't ruin me, Jonas McCrae. You freed me. Their kiss was hungry, urgent, full of mutual understanding. Jonas held her tightly, like she could keep him safe from the dangers their love would bring. When they parted, breathing hard, foreheads touching, Jonas said hoarsely, Clara, if we do this, if we commit knowing all this, there's no going back. You'll be wanted too, a fugitive's woman. They'll hunt you. Good, Clara said fiercely. Let them try. I'm done caring about small-minded people's opinions. I'd rather be hunted for something real than praised for something fake. Jonas stared, overwhelmed by her courage, her refusal to be scared by consequences. You're sure? Never been surer. Clara's hands framed his face, thumbs tracing his cheekbones. I love you, Jonas McCrae, not despite you being a fugitive, but including it, all of it. Your honor, strength, loneliness that taught you to value connection. I love you too, Jonas said, the words easier now, filled with wonder. More than I thought I could. More than I thought I deserved. More than you believed you could, Clara corrected. There's a difference. They stood in the afternoon light, holding each other like they could stop time. Outside, the wind hinted at more weather, more challenges. But inside, too, people who thought hope was gone found something worth any risk, a partnership of respect and acceptance. They were both fugitives now, outside the law, and that felt right. So, what now? Clara asked. Jonas smiled, his face softening. Now we get ready for Sheriff Garrett. After we deal with him, we plan our life together. As outlaws, as free people who answer to conscience, not rules. Jonas pulled her close, amazed at how perfectly she fit. Think you can handle that, schoolteacher? Clara's smile was pure mischief. Try me, soldier. Outside, storm clouds gathered, and danger rode closer on horseback. But inside, two people running from different pasts had found something worth fighting for. Each other. Spring came slow, each day bringing a bit more light and the sound of snow sliding off the cabin roof in wet clumps. Jonas felt the change. In his bones, the air pressure shifting, the light telling him the mountain passes would clear soon. Time was short. He stood at the window with his coffee, watching the trees for movement, listening for wrong sounds. Beside him, Clara cleaned his father's hunting knife carefully, its blade shining in the weak sun. The knife was the last thing his dad gave him before the war, a family treasure that had seen 3 generations of McCraes through tough times. Tell me about this, Clara said, touching the carved bone handle. My dad carried it at Buena Vista, his dad at New Orleans, with Andrew Jackson. Been in the family almost 60 years. Jonas set down his coffee and took the knife, feeling its weight. It's for close fighting when everything else fails. Clara studied the knife with the same focus she brought to everything now. No longer the soft teacher who stumbled into his clearing, but a woman who knew survival meant hard choices. Think it'll come to that? Maybe. Garrett won't quit easy, and cornered guys do crazy things. Jonas slid the knife into his belt sheath. But we've got tricks he doesn't know. This is my mountain. I know every trail, hiding spot, how the wind carries sound. They'd spent the past week preparing, sharpening weapons, stocking bullets, mapping escape routes through land that would challenge even skilled trackers. Jonas taught Clara to move quietly in snow, read tracks and weather, make a smokeless fire. She learned fast, knowing her life might depend on it. How many men will he bring? Clara asked, joining Jonas at the window. 5, maybe 6. Can't leave his town empty, but he'll bring enough to make sure I can't fight through. Jonas pointed to the southern trail winding through thick trees. They'll come that way. Only path good for horses with supplies. And if they split up, then we take them out one by one. Jonas's voice was calm, like a guy who'd fought outnumbered and won. The mountain'll help. Weather's tricky this time of year, and city guys don't get how fast it can change up here. Clara nodded, but Jonas saw her tension, her hand drifting to the pistol at her hip. She'd done well in practice, but shooting targets wasn't combat. When people started dying, everything changed. Clara, he said softly, you sure about this? Really sure. Once shooting starts, there's no undoing it. You'll have blood on your hands like me. Clara turned, her brown eyes steady. Jonas McCrae, I saw that man kill a federal marshal in cold blood. I felt his hands on my throat, heard him say what he'd do after I was his wife. If killing him means freedom, I'll live with the blood. Jonas searched her face for doubt, but found only strength. In less than 2 weeks, Clara had gone from victim to warrior, finding courage she didn't know she had. All right, but remember what I taught you. Don't hesitate when it's time. Hesitation kills. I won't hesitate. Jonas believed her. Clara had already shown she could make tough calls. The question wasn't her courage, it was if they'd both survive what was coming. A branch snapped outside, the sound carrying, in the thin air. Jonas raised a hand for quiet, moving to the window with silent steps. They waited, but the sound didn't come again. False alarm, Jonas said. Probably snow falling off a tree, but it won't be long. Clara checked. Their bandages and medicines ready for wounds. When it's over, she said without looking up, what then? Even if we win, there'll be questions, bodies to explain, maybe more lawmen coming. Jonas had been thinking the same. Depends what we find on the bodies. If Garrett's into federal crimes, like we think, there might be proof, letters, orders, something to explain why a marshal died. And if not, then we vanish. Head north to real wild country where nobody looks. Jonas met her eyes. I know. Places up there no white man's seen since the old trappers. We could build a life, just us. Clara nodded slowly. The idea of total isolation should have scared her, but it felt exciting. Life with Jonas in the deep wild would be tough, dangerous, needing every skill they had, but it would be free from society's rules that nearly broke her. That doesn't sound like punishment, she said. Sounds like paradise. Jonas smiled, his face lighting up. Hope you'll think so. A paradise we build ourselves, answering to nobody but us. The afternoon brought the first test of their defenses. Jonas was chopping wood behind the cabin when a rifle shot echoed, followed by a bullet's whistle. Someone was testing their range, seeing how well the cabin was guarded. Jonas dropped his axe and ran inside, finding Clara already at the window with his spare rifle scanning the trees. Southeast ridge, she said, eyes on the sight. Maybe 400 yards. Sawa muzzle. Flash. Jonas grabbed his rifle and went to the other window, impressed by Clara's calm. Just one shot so far, but there's movement, at least 3 guys, maybe more. Jonas scanned through his rifle scope, spotting odd colors, branches moving wrong, a glint of metal. His count matched Clara's. 3 men seen, meaning at least 2 were hidden. "They're testing," he said. "Checking how fast we react, how many guns we've got. Do we shoot back? Not yet. Let them guess." Jonas stayed low. "They know we're here, but not what we can do. Better to keep them wondering till they attack." For an hour, they played a tense game of hide-and-seek. The attackers showed themselves briefly, aimed, then ducked back before Jonas or Clara could shoot. It was mind games, trying to rattle them, make them waste bullets or leave their spots. "They want us to panic," Jonas said during a quiet moment. "Get us to shoot wild or run. But we're not newbies. No, we're not." Jonas checked his rifle again, the routine calming his battle nerves. "You're doing great, Clara. Better than some soldiers I knew." Clara felt proud at his words. The scared woman who fled to the mountains was gone, replaced by someone tougher, ready to face armed men without blinking. As the sun set, painting the peaks gold and red, the probing stopped. Jonas knew this was the risky time, dusk to dark, when attackers had the edge and defenders were weakest. "They'll come tonight," he said, dimming the fire for heat, not light. "Probably before dawn, when we're likely asleep." Clara nodded, checking her pistol and settling by the window. "I'll take first watch." "Clara, I can do this, Jonas. I need to." Her voice was firm. "These guys killed a marshal, would have forced me into marriage, or, worse, I won't hide while you fight my battles." Jonas looked at her in the dim light, hair tied back, gun belt snug, eyes sharp and determined. She was incredible, shining in the danger. "All right, but we do this together. No hero stuff, no dumb risks. We've got the home advantage and know the land. We use that and stay alive together." Clara agreed. As night fell, they settled into their watch. Jonas napped lightly, ears tuned to outside sounds. Clara stayed at the window, rifle ready, scanning for wrong movements. Around midnight, she woke Jonas with a soft touch. "I think I saw something," she whispered. "Northwest, near the woodpile." Jonas joined her, peering out. For minutes, nothing moved. Then he saw a shadow break from the darker shadows by the shed, moving sneaky like a guy trying not to be seen. "One guy," Jonas whispered, "scouting, checking our setup before the big attack." They watched the shadow circle the cabin, noting windows and doors, probably counting rifles inside. After 20 minutes, it slipped back into the woods, leaving no trace but the knowledge they were watched. "How long?" Clara asked. "Soon. They know enough now." Jonas grabbed more bullets, spreading them between their spots. "Next time we see movement, it's not scouting." Clara checked her weapons, then looked in Jonas's shaving mirror. She saw a stranger, harder, determined, with eyes that weren't innocent anymore. It should have scared her, but she felt fierce pride. This was who she was meant to be, not a victim, but a survivor. "Jonas," she said softly, "whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something." "What?" "I'm not sorry. Not for running finding you, choosing this life over the safe one." Clara turned from the mirror. "Even if we don't make it, I'm not sorry." Jonas crossed the cabin, pulling her into a tight hug. "We're gonna survive," he said fiercely. "Both of us. We'll win this and build our life, grow old watching sunsets from our porch." Clara kissed him, pouring love and strength into it. When they parted, both were breathing hard, stronger for their bond. "Promise me something," Clara said. "Anything. If I fall or get caught, don't do anything stupid to save me." "Escape, survive, live the life we planned." Jonas's jaw tightened. "Clara, promise, Jonas. I need to know my death won't ruin the man I love." Jonas stared, seeing the steel under her softness, the strength that carried her through impossible times. "I promise," he said finally. "But you promise the same. Deal." They shook hands seriously, sealing a pact they hoped never to keep. Outside, the wind carried snow's scent and more trouble. Somewhere in the dark, armed men were readying for an attack that would decide the fate of 2 people who found love in unlikely times. Jonas checked his rifle one last time and took his spot by the window. Beside him, Clara, the schoolteacher turned warrior, did the same. They were ready for what came next. The mountain waited for dawn. They came at dawns. Gray light, moving like ghosts in the mist. Jonas saw them first, 5 riders on the switchback trail, moving careful and planned. Sheriff Garrett rode in the middle, his big frame clear even far off, with tough-looking guys who held weapons like pros. 5 riders, Jonas said quietly, eye on his rifle scope. No sign of the 6th, so he's somewhere we can't see. Clara nodded from the south window, rifle aimed at the group. Her hands were steady, breathing calm. The nervous teacher was gone, replaced by someone Jonas hardly knew. Range 800 yards and closing. They'll be in rifle range in 10 minutes. Jonas adjusted his position, calculating angles like the soldier he was. Remember how to lead moving targets? These ain't still cans. I remember. The riders stopped at the trail's base, talking. Through his scope, Jonas saw Garrett point at the cabin, giving orders. The men nodded, spreading out like trained soldiers, not random thugs. They know their stuff, Jonas said grimly. Garrett's got pros, bounty hunters or ex-soldiers. Jonas tracked a rider vanishing into the trees on the cabin's left. This won't be easy. A loud voice echoed through the canyon. McCrae! Jonas McCrae! I know you're there! Jonas and Clara looked at each other but stayed quiet. Talking gave away their spots. I'm Sheriff Tom Garrett from Millerville, the voice went on. Here on official business, chasing a fugitive and getting stolen property. Clara's jaw tightened at being called property, but her rifle stayed steady. Send out the E. Woman McCrae, and we can talk terms. No need for anyone to get hurt over a mix-up. Jonas almost smirked at the obvious lie. Men like Garrett didn't ride this far to talk. The fake offer was just to trick them into showing themselves. You got 1 minute to think it over, Garrett yelled. Then we come in shooting. The minute felt like forever, filled with horse stomps and leather creaks as the attackers moved. Jonas used the time to ready extra bullets, rehearse, escape routes, and check firing angles. Clara looked calm, but Jonas saw the tension in her shoulders, her tight grip on the rifle. This was her first real fight, and no practice could predict how she'd handle bullets flying. Clara, he said softly, whatever happens, know I love you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. She looked at him, eyes, bright with tears and fierce will. I love you too, Jonas McCrae. Now let's show these jerks what happens when they mess with our home. The attack started sudden, not with Garrett's promised charge, but a rifle shot from the left trees. The bullet smashed the window by Jonas's head, spraying glass and proving the 6th man had snuck into a side position overnight. Sniper in the trees, Jonas called, dropping low and crawling to the cabin's back. Southwest, maybe. 200 yards. Clara moved smoothly, aiming at the new threat while Jonas watched the main path. It was a perfect defense move, like they'd practiced for hours. The sniper shot again, the bullet hitting the log wall near Clara's head, splinters, flying. She didn't flinch, tracking the muzzle flash in the shadows. Got him, she said, and fired. A cry of pain and a crash followed, not a kill shot, but enough to stop the sniper. Jonas felt proud of Clara's aim and glad a problem was solved. Nice shot, he said, focusing back on the main threat as Garrett's men charged on horseback. The attack was brutal, straight, and skilled. 4 riders came in a loose line, shooting from horses with ease, their speed making them hard to hit. It was a move that worked against lone farmers or unprepared folks. But Jonas wasn't either. His first shot hit the left rider in the chest, knocking him off to lie still in the snow. His second wounded a horse, making its rider fall as it screamed. Clara's rifle fired twice fast, her bullets hitting true. One man grabbed his shoulder, blood pouring as he turned his horse away. The other tried to shoot back but found his gun empty. In 30 seconds, Garrett's planned attack turned to chaos. 2 men down, 1 hurt and running, only the sheriff left to keep fighting. But Garrett wasn't done. As his last man fled, he got off his horse and hid behind a fallen log, his rifle searching for targets. His first shot just missed Jonas, hitting the cabin wall with a thud. He's good, Jonas admitted, impressed by Garrett's skill despite himself. This won't be simple. They traded shots with the sheriff for minutes, a deadly game of patience where one mistake meant death. Garrett's spot was smart, protected by the log with clear shots at both windows. I can't get a clean shot, Clara said, frustrated. He's got too much cover. Jonas thought like a soldier. Garrett was stuck. Couldn't move forward without getting hit. Couldn't run without turning his back to their rifles. It was a standoff only broken by moving or more firepower. Keep him pinned, Jonas decided. I'm gonna circle around and get him from the side. Jonas, no. It's the only way. He's got us stuck, and he'll get lucky or we'll run out of bullets. Jonas checked his pistol and knife, heading for the back door. Keep shooting. Make him think we're both inside. Clara wanted another. One where Jonas didn't risk getting shot. But she knew sometimes you had to go through a trap to get out. Be careful, she said. Jonas paused at the door, looking at the woman who'd changed his life. I'll be back, he promised. We've got a future to build. He slipped out silently, using his mountain skills. Clara's rifle kept firing, keeping Garrett focused on the windows. The final fight was coming. Jonas moved through the trees like a shadow, his years in the mountains helping him circle toward Garrett's spot. Snow hid his steps. Pine branches covered him from Garrett's desperate scans. Clara's rifle kept its steady beat, each shot, keeping the sheriff focused on the cabin while Jonas got to a side position. His rifle, Old Thunder, felt like an old friend as he settled behind a big pine, its worn stock against his cheek. The gun had seen him through hunting trips, fights with thieves, and frontier dangers. Now it would protect the woman he loved. Through his scope, Jonas saw Garrett clearly, a big guy, tough-looking, with a face that said violence was his go-to. His eyes scanned constantly, and his rifle showed he'd killed before and would again. But Garrett made a mistake. Focusing so hard on the cabin, he forgot his sides. It was a deadly error, and Jonas was ready to use it. Garrett, Jonas called, his voice clear across the 50 yards. Sheriff Tom Garrett. The sheriff spun toward the sound, rifle swinging fast. But Jonas was moving, shifting spots as he spoke, using old cavalry tricks to hide his place. You made 2 mistakes coming here, Jonas went on, voice from a new angle. First, thinking you could take what's not yours. Garrett shot at the voice, his bullet hitting a tree 6 feet from Jonas. The sheriff loaded another round, searching the woods. Second, thinking I'd let you live after threatening the woman I love. Garrett turned again, trying to track Jonas's voice as it moved. His face was red with anger and panic. He was losing control and knew it. McCrae! Garrett yelled. You're dead! You and your woman both! The words lit a rage in Jonas he hadn't felt since the army. Threats to him were fine, but not to Clara. Jonas stood smoothly, rifle aimed. Garrett saw him and tried to aim, but he was too slow. Jonas's first shot hit Garrett's right shoulder, knocking his rifle away. Garrett stumbled but didn't fall, grabbing his pistol with his left hand. He was tough.